Like every morning, Nick heads off to the office, but today, something's bothering him. As he gets into his car, he receives a phone call from home, and he answers no, not to wait up for him. He'll probably be very late this evening. Nick is responsible for reporting. In his work, he has to regularly collect data from the organization's business lines. It can be any type of data. It can be complex, and there's often lots of it. Nick has to collect it, archive it, and consolidate it. And to do that, he's never found anything handier than Excel. The problem, Nick well knows, is that between the subsidiaries that never send anything, those that send it late, those that send multiple versions, and those that send incomplete or inconsistent data, he needs to spend a lot of time obtaining the data he needs. And he says to himself, there must be a better solution. So one day, Nick goes to see Steve and explains his problem. Steve is the IT manager, and he tells him, "Why didn't you come to see me earlier? In our organization, we use Gatering Tools for all processes of this kind. Just tell me, is the Excel template you've created fully understood and accepted by your correspondents?" "Yes," replies Nick. "I've developed an Excel template that is perfectly adapted to our business environment, and we pass them back and forth with our correspondents extensively to be sure that everyone understood what the collected indicators mean and how we would use them." "Great, that's perfect. You've done the most difficult thing," says Steve. "Send me your Excel template and use Gathering Tools, and I'll convert it into a secure format. I just need to select the various tabs of your Excel spreadsheet and import them into the Gathering Tools Form Design module. That will give you your converted document. It will no longer be in Excel format, but will look and work just like it, even the most complex calculation formulas. I will then mark the cells that the correspondents are allowed to enter data into. I can add constraints, for example, require that only actuals can be entered, add some limits, and, most importantly, make this data mandatory. Your correspondence will not be disrupted because the new document will be visually identical to the Excel spreadsheet that you've been asking them to fill in. During data entry, the document will recalculate itself in real time, and if they try to send an incomplete document, they won't be able to, and the tool will display a series of hyperlinks that take them to the offending cells. Similarly, all the management rules will be preserved. Here, you didn't want money out to exceed money in, and so you had created conditional formatting highlighting the incorrect total and displaying an error message. Your rule will be preserved and will be a blocking one. In the case of an error, even if the document is complete, the send function will be blocked. Your error message will be displayed and a hyperlink will take the user to the offending total. It is only when the data complies with your management rules that they will be able to send it. In summary, all your Excel investment will be preserved and secured without me needing to rebuild it. "Okay," says Nick. "Gathering Tools will let me obtain homogeneous information. But can this tool also help me manage the correspondence, ensure follow-up, traceability, versioning?" "Of course," replies Steve. "With Gathering Tools, there's no more back and forth of files. You just need to connect to your console and you have access to all the functions that will allow you to manage your processes. Imagine it's the start of the month. You want to send out your forms to the subsidiaries for monthly reporting. All you need to do is run the launch campaign action corresponding to your process. When you do, the tool displays the list of your subsidiaries. Just select and launch your action. When you do, the server generates all the subsidiaries' documents, and with one click, it distributes them. For your correspondents, no problem. They simply receive an email. This email is automatically personalized with the project data and contains the form as an attachment. When they open the attachment, they find the document that they already know, and they can provide the data like they did when they were using Excel. And just like Excel, they can work in offline mode, print it, save a local copy, send it to their superior, etc. And when the document is complete, with one click, they send the data to be consolidated. You understand why there's no change management for your correspondence. It's because there is simply no change. "Well, hold on a minute," says Nick. "You say my correspondents will be able to enter the data like in Excel. But most of the time, they don't actually enter it. This is because, for some processes, the data can be massive and it already exists. My correspondents copy it from another file, import it into a local tool, create macros, links. If I ask them to re-enter everything, they'll see the project is saving me lots of time, but taking much longer than before for the subsidiaries, and that just won't work." "Don't worry, that won't happen," says Steve. "I'm sure your correspondents generally customize their Excel spreadsheets, and for very good reasons. Let's take Francine's case, for example. The first time she received your Excel template, she immediately saw that a large part of the data that you were asking for already existed in other Excel spreadsheets. She therefore built all the links that allowed her to retrieve that data. For her, the time and effort paid off. With Gathering Tools, she'll be able to preserve it. When she receives her form, she'll be happy to see that it is identical to the Excel document she knows. And as she has already built all her data in Excel, she would really like to import it into the form. What worries her is that the form and the Excel spreadsheet are not exactly identical. For example, when she received your original template, she noticed that in her subsidiary there was no interco, so she naturally deleted that row in Excel. Similarly, she inserted a few columns to add indicators used for local management at her subsidiary. Once again, all these modifications are valuable at local level. But of course, they present a risk when the consolidation is done in Excel. But with Gatering Tools, there's no longer any danger. Francine simply clicks on the Import button on the form. The tool detects the Excel tabs containing data that can be imported, and that data is intelligently pulled into the form. I say intelligently because, for example, the intercodes that Francine deleted in the Excel spreadsheet are empty, but if they are mandatory in the form, they must be re-entered to be able to transmit the data. Similarly, if the data imported from Excel contravenes the form's management rules, the send function will be blocked. A hyperlink will point to the offending indicators, and Francine will need to correct her data to be able to send it. Impressive, says Nick. But there's still a problem. If the correspondents can make any modification they want to their Excel spreadsheet to then import into the form, and if it's in the form that the management rules indicate errors, it means that the data was wrong in Excel. But if the Excel spreadsheets were extensively modified, the users will no doubt have trouble locating the errors, won't they? On the contrary, replies Steve, Gatering Tools will help the correspondents to manage the errors. Let's take Dennis's case. He made an interesting modification. He separated actuals from forecast, simply by moving the forecast to another tab, then modifying it the way he wanted and renaming it. While doing so, he made a keying error without realizing it. What's going to happen? When he imports the data into the form, all the data will effectively be imported, except data that is inconsistent. There again, a message is displayed, but this time, as the error comes from Excel, the tool will reopen the Excel spreadsheet, automatically display the right tab, and select the cell that the error is coming from. Once the error is corrected, Dennis relaunches the import and, if there's no other error, he can transmit the data. What's interesting, says Nick, is that Gatering Tools preserves all the time and effort invested in the existing system. My central form is preserved, but so are all the local feed mechanisms. What I want to understand now is, how can I manage this entire process and know who did what? You manage it via your management console, replies Steve. In the Campaigns tab, you can see at a glance what stage your process is at. Here, of the 4 subsidiaries that you contacted, 3 have replied. With one click, you display the detail and you can see that, right now, it's Canada that has not replied. While waiting for it to do so, you can review the replies that you've already received. Let's look at France. The reply was sent at 4:05 p.m. and by clicking on it, you can view it. Note that the data is displayed in the format of your template, and not in the Excel format modified by the subsidiary. This makes the versions comparable. You can now go back into a workflow process. If this version suits you, you can validate it and explain the reasons why this version is valid. Of course, you can also do the opposite. So for Argentina, there is practically no forecast data. You cannot accept this version, so you will reject it, again explaining why you did so. As for Algeria, its data is perfectly acceptable. Of course, the server keeps a log of all your actions, so we will know that it was you, Nick, who validated the Algeria data at 4:48 p.m. and why. But Gatering Tools also allows you to manage the dialogue with your correspondence. In fact, although it is important to know that 1/4 of the subsidiaries have not replied and that 1/3 of the data received is invalid, what you want is the non-respondents to reply and the inconsistent data to be corrected. To do so, you can use the reminder function. With one click, you can ask the server to send subsidiaries who haven't replied a reminder email including the form again, and you can do the same for inconsistent data. Select the invalidated subsidiaries and they will receive an email containing the document to be corrected. You can even define your email on the fly and make it dynamic. For example, in the subject line of the email you specify the name of the subsidiary concerned. Then in the body of the message, you indicate who rejected this version and why. This email can then be used as a template. It will be sent to all invalidated subsidiaries. You can track down to local level. Thus, Francine, whose reply was validated, automatically receives a confirmation of receipt. Juan, and the Argentinian subsidiary, receives the rejection message, which explains that Nick has rejected his data because the forecasts are missing. Juan will therefore open the form and import the data from Excel. Make any corrections, then will resend a new version. As for Daniel in Canada, he receives the reminder email, opens the attachment form and replies. But then, he realizes he has made an error, so he reopens his form, imports different data, and does a new send. "Hold on," says Nick. "Daniel has just sent his data twice, but what am I going to receive? Does his second reply delete the first?" "It's simple," replies Steve. "The tool keeps all the versions so you can select whichever one you want. Look, on your console, you can now see that all the subsidiaries have replied. And if you want to drill down, you can see that for Argentina, in addition to the version that you had previously invalidated, a new version has been received. If you're happy with this version, you simply validate it, but both versions are preserved." Similarly, for Canada, you see that 2 versions have been received. You can compare the 2, and you decide that you prefer the first. There again, validating this version automatically invalidates all the other versions, but no reply is deleted. Your campaign is now finished. All the subsidiaries have replied, and for each subsidiary, a version has been validated. All you need now is to store that data, simply by running the integration function. "Good," says Nick, "but once my data is collected, how do I go about using it? At the moment, I do my analyses in an Excel dashboard, and this consolidation table represents a lot of time and effort invested. Due to the limitations of Excel, it is complicated to make it available to my correspondents, but it works well. Does Gathering Tools force me to redo it in another technology?" "Actually, you can do what you like," replies Steve. "Gathering Tools lets you synchronize the data that you collect to our information system. Thus, all the data you collect can be accessible via the retrieval tools that we already have. But if you are fully satisfied with your Excel dashboard, Gathering Tools lets you keep it. I simply load it onto the server and configure the data connections. With one click, you can automatically distribute an updated dashboard to your correspondents, each one receiving a spreadsheet populated with the data of its perimeter. So to sum up, says Nick, with Gathering Tools, I can preserve everything I've built, my Excel collection spreadsheet and my dashboard. And Gathering Tools transforms my Excel spreadsheets into secure forms while preserving all their functionalities. Gathering Tools synchronizes the forms to our information system and lets me manage the data construction workflow. And I've already done the most complicated part of it. You could almost say that my Excel spreadsheets are the specification documents for this project. That's exactly it, says Steve. With Gathering Tools, we're both winners. You no longer need to manually collect monitoring data and do consolidations. And I can synchronize your data with our information system without needing to rebuild everything you've done. For me, it's a project that structures, uses few resources, and is reactive. I presume you have nothing against it. And Nick actually doesn't have anything against it. Returning to his office, he starts by sending his Excel templates to Steve. He then calls home to ask them to wait up. He shouldn't be too late in getting home.